See some love. Oh,
welcome back to another episode of Road to William. Today is the first day of Women's History Month, Women's Month, Women's Month. It's the first day of Women's Month. So we're going to be mixing in highlighting just a few of the many women who paved the way for us to be where we are today. I know we look at the Malcolm X's and the Martin Luther King Jr.'s of the time, but often we forget that, well, I don't forget, but people forget that the women are the reason they had the courage to even go out there to pursue this, to continue. At any point, those great men could have opted out, got comfortable, like, okay, we got what we need. Who cares what the rest of the people don't have? I mean, it takes not only just yourself, you do need a good support system that will help you get to your dreams. It's just, I know we like to say, oh, it's all on your own to an extent, yeah, but when you have that push, it's like a boost. It's like in a video game when you get a boost and then you just go harder. I mean, so everybody needs a support system. So the first person, and I already knew for a while, I've been knowing who was going to drop, who was going to be the first woman to drop on my channel. And I'm like, I don't know. There's so many we could do, but I'm going to do a review on it soon. But the what is it? MLK X Genius. It's on Disney Plus. So if you don't have Disney, go check that out. If you got Disney Plus, go check it. Yeah, it's a dope film. It's a series of the story of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and you see a lot of what they went through as men at the house. We know them as men in the public. Like, oh, okay, they did this for the community, but what were they like at home as well? So they gave you a little good of both. Um, great actors, actresses on set. I love the vision of it. I'll dive into that. Look forward to that. That's coming out soon. I'm gonna try and drop that as soon as I can. But I got a lot of things coming out here. And if you haven't read the book Elite Capture yet, go check that out. We're gonna do a book discussion. And I'm like, oh, no. No, I'm gonna do a book review on it. But I'm also diving in onto like how other people feel about the book too. So I'm getting different opinions. But I'm currently listening to it on audiobook, and I'm not gonna dive into that. Just know I'm reading it. We're getting things handled. So if you haven't heard of this book yet, called Elite Capture, go check it out. Back to the topic at hand. Anyways, I was talking about that series because a lot of what I learned wasn't necessarily what they did for the people in the public. Like I said, we all knew what they did in the public. Maybe not everything, but for the most part, we get the gist of it. But I love how they I love how they talked about Betty Shabazz and Coretta Scott King. Today, we're going to focus on Coretta Scott King. Look forward to the Betty one. Look forward to a bunch of videos coming out. Just look for it. Make sure you guys click on that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I drop. I also let y'all know on Instagram, on my TikTok, on the community tab. I let y'all know when some new videos are dropping. We're dropping daily. Let's do this. Today, we're going to learn about Coretta Scott King. I recommend you guys going and doing your own research, of course, but really, I want y'all to watch that series. Let me know in the comments if you've seen it. Get your snacks. We're about to get it started.
I don't think that my husband, although he said he was going to go back south and fight to change the system, and he was thinking about not just in Alabama or in Georgia, but he was talking about making our society more inclusive, changing the system so that everybody could participate. Uh, Although he talked about that, at that time, we never dreamed that we would have an opportunity that we would be projected into the forefront of the struggle as we were. We were just going to work from, as he said, a Black Baptist church pulpit. That was the freest place, in the society at that time. But we had no idea that what God had in store for us, and I do believe it was a divine intervention that we were thrust into the forefront of the struggle. After we married, we moved to Montgomery, Alabama, where my husband had accepted an invitation to be the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Before long, we found ourselves in the middle of the Montgomery bus boycott, and Martin was elected leader of the protest movement. As the boycott continued, I had a growing sense that I was involved in something so much greater than myself, something of profound historic importance. I came to the realization that we had been thrust into the forefront of a movement to liberate oppressed people, not only in Montgomery, but also throughout our country, and this movement had worldwide implications. Well, first of all, I was extremely excited and about what was going on, because this was something that had never happened before, and I knew this was history making. And I also knew that it was not only happening in Montgomery, but the impact of this was really much farther, much more extensive than Montgomery, because during the Montgomery boycott, we heard that there was a boycott in Johannesburg, South Africa, of buses, and also there was one in Mobile and in Tallahassee. So it was like it was spreading. But we also knew that the struggle was much bigger than a boycott. It was about the injustices in our society. It was about changing the society in such a way, and changing the laws of the government locally, and certainly nationally. We had to create new laws to protect us and protect the rights once they were won. And we even experienced what was like modern day miracles when things happened, like when the Supreme Court had ruled on bus desegregation. We were in court that day. When we moved to Montgomery in 1955, it really was 54, September. The conditions of segregation and the humiliation that attended that was very complete. Blacks and whites were completely separated, and there had been several incidents where blacks and whites were involved, but blacks attempting to ride the buses, and where they had been beaten and dragged off, arrested, and so on. And it was the cradle of the Confederacy, really, and no one ever expected any progress to be made in terms of race relations in Montgomery, in terms of it being the original place or the initiator. We were very happy there, though, in our church situation. Martin was the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. And that church had had a history of ministers that had been socially conscious and had been challenging the people to do something about those conditions. He himself, the pastor just before Martin, the Reverend Johns, had called for a boycott. He had talked about other conditions that Black people suffered under and challenged them to do something about it. So the situation seemed to have been ready for a leader. We did not know that it was the time of an idea when we arrived, but that's exactly what happened. It was an idea whose time had come, and Martin was there. And I think I often say that the man, the moment, and the situation.
Revealing and exclusive new recordings tonight of the late Coretta Scott King, wife and close advisor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. ABC's Robin Roberts sits down with their daughter, Bernice.
I have a dream.
They are some of the most revered words in American history.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, heralding his vision of racial justice and equality in America, cementing his place in history. But Coretta Scott King, the wife of the man we honor today, was herself crucial to the struggle for civil rights.
She was a very powerful woman.
Dr. Bernice King is the youngest of the couple's 4 children.
And as she used to say, came from great stock. And Martin didn't make her. When they met, she was prepared.
In newly released audio tapes, Mrs. King made it clear from the beginning of their marriage that she would be a force to be reckoned with. Listen closely to this exclusive recording as Mrs. King recalls a conversation she had with her husband.
I said, well, you know, I love being your wife as a mother of your children, but if that was all that I did, I would go crazy.
The tapes are the basis of her posthumously released memoir, My Life, My Love, My Legacy. Your father wrote this about your mother. A wife can either make or break a husband. My wife was always stronger than I was through the struggle. In the darkest moments, she always brought the light of hope. Was that your mom?
In those crises moments, in those very difficult, challenging times, she rose to an occasion. And she could carry you. She could carry many people. Well, I believe that Martin was chosen. I believe that I was chosen. And I say to the kids, this family was chosen as well.
Mrs. King believed in their purpose as leaders of the civil rights movement. She thought she was as destined as him.
Exactly.
To do good things, great things.
Yes.
And not because she was his wife.
Nonviolence is the most powerful force that we have for the counteracting of hatred, bitterness, and violence which have infested our society.
And I honestly believe in a different kind of way she did greater things, probably because she lived longer, but also because she had the insight to see who he really was.
Out of the spotlight, the Kings were like any other young couple. She had one simple wish.
I told him every woman wants a house. That's all I need is a house. Not that I have my own house. I'm fine.
And your father was like, no, because he didn't want people to think that he was benefiting from the movement. And your mom was like, I want a house. And she got that. So it tells you a little bit about her tenacity.
Yes, definitely. It also came out of her feeling and sensing that he was not going to be there long. And if something happens, you know, what are we going to have?
Mrs. King's tenacity and strength were put to the test in 1956 when the house they were living in was bombed.
Think about this. Daddy was a leader, but Mother was the one who first experienced the manifestation of a threat. She was in the home when it was bombed, not him.
And her baby girl.
And the baby girl. It's like God designed it this way because she had to first come to a resolve that I'm willing to risk the loss of my own life before even him.
Mrs. King says their marriage was further tested in 1964 when FBI tapes claimed to expose her husband's alleged infidelities, although Mrs. King denied any truth to the rumors.
All this stuff is fabricated. And I think that was Martin's great concern, that something could happen like that. Because, see, my husband was one of the most moral persons that I have ever known. And, I mean, at every level, personally as well as publicly. I mean, he struggled to make sure that he was worthy of the respect and the love that people had for him.
She said, I know my husband. And if he were having an affair, I would know.
The couple had been married for almost 15 years when on April 4th, 1968, Dr. King was assassinated at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee.
A sniper's bullet cut down Dr. King as he stood on a hotel balcony in Memphis.
Most of you know how I feel at this time, and the most important thing is that my husband's work will be carried forward.
After his death, Mrs. King kept her late husband's memory alive for their children.
You know, my mother invoked him every chance she got in our home. You know, if we're at the dinner table, the breakfast table, in conversation, she would always say, your father. Your father would say, your father. Your father said this, your father.
And worked tirelessly to ensure his place in history.
All right-thinking Americans are joined in spirit with us this day as the highest recognition which this nation gives is bestowed upon Martin Luther King Jr. She was the architect of this King legacy. What we know of my father really came from her resilience, her determination, her faith, her courage.
Here at the King Center in Atlanta, Dr. Bernice King discussed her hope for maintaining her parents' legacy of peace and understanding. How do we use what your mother and father fought so hard for to move forward? So I'm going to use his quote and her quote. His quote is, people hate each other because they fear each other. And they fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they are not communicating. They don't communicate because they're not connected. And then on the other hand, my mother said, struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. She would help us to understand that we are all been called to this freedom struggle in the world. In these times, we have to be unrelenting in ensuring that certain freedoms are not lost, and that as we do it, when you think about my father's quote, we have to find a way, a common ground that we can move forward in. For Nightline, I'm Robin Roberts in Atlanta.
Step into Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises.
My husband had a dream, but he was no dreamer. He moved and he did. He preached nonviolence, but he lived day by day with the real courage that violent men really do not have. That day in Washington, D.C., I believe he expressed not only for the Black people of America, but for all free men, the true American dream.
And say to you today, my friend, let freedom reign. Let freedom reign. From the land. Let freedom reign from every hill and mold in Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom reign in
Gentlemen of the graduating class of 1968, your parents and friends, it is indeed a humbling experience for me to have been invited by you to give your class day address. In trying to perform this awesome task, which my late husband would have done with great ease, I feel a deep sense of inadequacy. Nonetheless, the confidence and faith which you have placed in me is a source of encouragement and inspiration. In these days when young people want so earnestly to make their own decisions, it is most comforting and gratifying for me to have been invited directly by you and not derivatively through administrative decision. The tragic events of recent months starting with the assassination of my late husband, Martin Luther King Jr., in Memphis, Tennessee, and followed in exactly 2 months by the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy in Los Angeles, California, cause us to realize that the very fabric of which our society is woven is being torn away. These men have been eulogized as great men, as loyal Americans and dedicated servants of humanity, one black and one white, both young men. By profession, one was a minister who sought to change society by moral persuasion through love and nonviolence. The other was a political leader who sought to change society through the political process. Both methods are necessary and highly legitimate. These two men addressed themselves to the burning issues of our times. They spoke out against great evils in our society: racism, poverty, and war. They were great and effective actors on the stage of history. They played their parts exceedingly well, thus inspiring millions. They are part of that creative minority which helped to move society forward. As young people, as students, your lives have been greatly affected by the loss of these champions of freedom, of justice, of human dignity and peace. In a power-drunk world where means become ends and violence becomes a favorite pastime, we are swiftly moving towards self-annihilation. Your generation must speak out with righteous indignation against the forces which are seeking to destroy us. The student today is not the carefree, frivolous young person of yesterday's college novels. And decisively, he is not the acquisitive careerist we bemoaned as members of the silent and apathetic generation. Today's student is a serious-minded, independent-thinking individual who seeks to analyze and understand the problems of society and find solutions to these problems which are in keeping with the highest traditions and values of our democratic system. His response to the challenge of the crucial period in the history of our nation and the world is indeed a sobering influence on all of us. What we have seen in the way of student protests is in large measure a reaction to a status quo establishment-centered institutions of which students feel have allowed them little or no voice in policy-making decisions. This conflict between students and administration has often been improperly interpreted by the media, giving the impression that only a few leftist militants are making trouble. This is tantamount to skirting the real issues involved. Today's student is now recognized as a significant political actor with amazing power to influence the course of societies all over the world. In many ways, American students have now, with all their innocence and open generosity, become the prodding conscience to those in power and those aspiring to it. In the United States, candidates for the highest office in the land worry as much about their student support as formerly they concerned themselves with the farm bloc, organized trade union support, or the backing of businessmen. Indeed, the enthusiasm of students in a political cause is a vestment of its legitimacy and honesty. The student crusades behind Senator Eugene McCarthy and the fallen Robert Kennedy created a virtual political miracle by retiring an incumbent president, moving the government to the Paris peace talks, and hopefully inducing basic revisions in our foreign policy. The political scene in our country has never been so marked by student action. And it is not reckless to predict that this is no apparent phenomenon, but a fundamental shift in social patterns that will distinguish this era from others past. Along with classes and races and conventional pressure groups, generations are now useful and appropriate categories of historical action and understanding. It is a totally novel development and a paradoxical one that students, most of whom have no vote, emerge as a formidable political force for progressive change. If student action has been dramatic in the United States, its impact has been thunderous in Europe. In France, it was the spark that ignited a political conflagration engulfing the whole society and forcing it to confront long-delayed issues of economic justice and real political freedom. There too, a government pursued foreign and military policies on the backs of its citizens. In Czechoslovakia, the young have stimulated far-reaching developments that will, in the end, have irrecoverably altered the face of Eastern Europe. Another moment in the long struggle to liberate it from dogma. How can we explain the depth and the scope of the student movements and the social upheavals they evoke? I think it must be seen that in the swiftly evolving technological societies of today, students, faculty, and all intellectuals are playing a new role. They are not only contributors, as in the past, of ideas and new concepts to the masses, no longer merely rationalizers of the status quo, but in the nature of modern industrial society, they have become a mass force themselves. They count. They are crucial. As the old Union song has it, without their brain and muscle, not a single wheel can turn. Mostly, of course, their brain. Therefore, and beyond this, I think the students of today are the sensitive edge of society that is pressing against the dehumanizing elements of technocracy. Human personality and values have been in a losing war with the impersonal operation of a rapidly evolving complex society. We are a nation incomparable in wealth and power, but impoverished spiritually and psychologically. Our activities generate a bewildering array of material goods and no satisfactions. Our machines have grown so large, and we have become so small. We no longer ask for what purpose they are made. Instead of a flowering of personality, with the decrease in heavy labor, there is such a loss of identity and growth of alienation that the distinctiveness of individuals has become blurred and homogenized. My husband frequently warned us of a trend toward what he called the thingification of people, a thing-centered rather than a person-centered society. Why have students been more sensitive to this assault on personality? This generation is practically the first to be brought up in the modern child-rearing philosophy, according to which each child is an individual. They were encouraged and stimulated to be independent, assertive, and individually creative. This was the thesis of countless child-rearing books. It may be Dr. Spock's Real Conspiracy.
If you want to watch the full video, go to Harvard University's channel. We're going to end it off there. Definitely go check out more Coretta Scott King's interviews, her life, But definitely check out the MLK/X Genius. I think it was like made by the National Geographic or something like that. It was something around there. It was something like that. I hope y'all enjoyed today's video. It's Friday. I hope y'all turn up, be safe. Yeah, I'm just gonna be dropping videos every single day. If you haven't followed me on my Snapchat, it's William Road 22. I'm on Instagram. You can hit me up on Instagram. You can hit me up on the community tab. Let me know if you got anybody you want me to do a story on, we focus on. Let me know in the comments. I just wanna drive in the Audi. I wanna make her scream loudy. What the fuck they all